All right, welcome into episode 11 of Save the Franchise. You might notice I'm alone, but yeah, I'm gonna get roll this. This is my first solo podcast, so I'm gonna try and see how this goes. We're gonna preview Week 1 today. I'm really excited. I'm recording this Wednesday evening. Before we got less than 24 hours to go to real football as of the time that I'm recording this, with the Cowboys facing off against the Eagles, Eagles banner night on Thursday, and I'm so excited for the NFL season to start off. I can't even express it to you. I mean, if you've been watching any of our videos or anything you've seen, I mean, we've been talking about stuff all off season. Football never leaves my brain, and so that off season stretch is hard. No real new football to evaluate, nothing to really think about, and no highlights to watch. Like, I need to get back to football during that time, and so now it's finally here. I'm excited, ready to go. So I think that's part of what's spurring the solo episode. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about. I'm gonna predict each of the results of all these 16 games that we've got this week. 16 NFL games. Gonna talk through some points, just things I'm excited to see. Right? It could be questions I have. It could be specific players I want to get the first taste of. Just like talking about the excitement of Week 1 and what are these new things that we're really interested in. Some of these things might overlap with some of the off-season topics that we've had, that other shows have had. We're not going to be immune to that. It's definitely, those things are going to be part of the interest factor, right? But ultimately, I just want to go through, just like, really format everything, show, put everything in perspective, and cover my thoughts on every team heading into Week 1, and I'm excited to kick that off. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get going on that. So like I said, we're kicking it off. Eagles, Cowboys, Thursday night. The Eagles are raising their banner. Sirianni seems to think that that's not something the Eagles players should be out there to see. I guess they're pretty confident they're going to go get another one. We'll see about that. But yeah, so the Eagles are my prediction to win. So surprise, surprise. Even before the Mike Parsons trade, I would have predicted the Eagles to win fairly handily. Now the Cowboys defense is very suspect in my opinion. The secondary has interesting pieces, right? But they've been injured. There's issues at safety, at linebacker, and now you've lost your two best pass rushers in one offseason, with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence leaving the building. And so I just don't see how their defense is even going to come close to going toe-to-toe with Philly. Jerry Jones seems to think that the run defense will be so improved. So maybe you'll stop Saquon. But even if we said that they stop Saquon, which I don't think they will, but even if they stopped Saquon, reasonably well over the course of that game, you've still got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert to deal with. I don't see any reasonable case to be made that the Cowboys are going to go in there and actually limp the Eagles to a reasonable number of points that makes it possible for the offense to keep up, especially given the quality of the Eagles defense. And so, I have some takes. I think the Cowboys offense is really set to have a bounce back and all that, and I think we'll hopefully see some aspects of that in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting implications there for fantasy purposes, but in terms of actually winning this game, I just don't think they have the juice, and so yeah, I'm picking the Eagles to win this game. Couple things I want to see out of the Eagles. Saquon usage. So like I said, I think the Eagles are going to win this fairly handily, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. So I think you're going to have a chance to lay off Saquon's touches a little bit in this game, just like I think the Eagles will have the opportunity to do in a lot of games this year. And if I was an Eagles fan, if I wanted the Eagles to succeed, that's something I'd want to see them do. He got a ridiculous number of touches last year, and the historical data for that is not definitive, but it's not great. There's a lot of troubling instances where guy has an amazing 400-plus touch season, just very efficient while having that sort of volume. There's all sorts of those seasons, and then the next year they come back and they start getting that workload again, and something goes wrong injury-wise. And so, I'm not wishing injury on Saquon, and I'm not saying I think that's going to happen for sure, but I think going for another 400-plus touch season definitely increases the likelihood of that happening. And I don't know that the Eagles need him to be successful in the playoffs, but it's definitely helpful to have. I mean, no one can deny the impact that Saquon has on the field. So what I'd like to see them do this season is, when you have the opportunity to, I understand the quality of the other running backs is not great, but lay off Saquon a bit if you can. And I'm not sure Sirianni and that coaching staff has that sort of mentality. That's typically not how they view their star players or how they want to use them. But I think it's something they need to adopt, at least in the case of their star running back, that they really don't have another option behind. It's one thing for the Lions to pile on touches for Jahmyr Gibbs when you still have David Montgomery. The Eagles, you don't really have that sort of option behind Saquon. So, yeah, I would like to see them do that. The other thing I'm curious to see is how are they aligning Jihad Campbell, their first round pick at linebacker. They picked him at 31. I want to see, like, is this actually going to be a thing where they're going to use him as another light edge rusher, which is completely possible. He's got a little bit short arms. He's very fast, strong for his size. I could see it. I don't know that that's how I would use him. I lean towards the more heavy defensive ends that can really hold up against the run, and then you push the pocket, especially against elite quarterbacks, right? But I could definitely see them deciding that that's where they wanted to go with Jihad Campbell, given that there's plenty of other bodies in the linebacker room, and they're still probably trying to figure out who exactly are going to be their impact players off the edge. So yeah, I want to see, is he playing off-ball linebacker? Is he playing off the edge most of the time? Are they adopting more, 5-down looks maybe, where they insert Campbell in one of the gaps, and then they choose to either drop him or send him, depending on what they want to do. My only thing with that is typically the teams that adopt that sort of a strategy are more pressure-oriented teams. The Spagnuolos, the Brian Floreses of the world, they like to put people in the gaps and then choose to send them or not. Fangio's a little bit more of, no, I'm dropping my guys, and so the threat of sending that person is not so significant because the team will still be expecting the 4-man pass rush, even if you've got guys up in the gaps. But I could see a lot of game-wrecking potential there if Fangio would, kind of consider doing that with him, with Jihad Campbell and Bond, because those are both very edge type of linebackers, right? Like, they're quality. They would still be quality pieces off the edge most likely, and so if you could kind of play those games with both of them, I could see you creating a lot of chaos up front. But I think it's fair to ask the question if the Eagles are even interested in doing that. So yeah, I'm just really fascinated to see what that looks like. All right, let's talk Cowboys. So is the passing game going to be back on track? That's my biggest question. I want to know, 2023, they were really good. And I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about that. Dak was injured a lot of last year. CeeDee Lamb was the only real wide receiver. You had O-line injuries. There were just a lot of things that were inhibiting them from really throwing the ball like they wanted to. But Dak was an MVP candidate for most of 2023. I mean, he was highly productive. And I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that that's kind of what's in store for us again this year, especially with the diminished defense. And so, maybe I don't expect them to have gaudy numbers against a good defense like the Eagles, but if they could come out here and put on a good display, show us how Pickens is going to be integrated on the offense, show us, let's get a couple cool seam balls with Ferguson. That could be a good way to attack that Fangio system. And then let CeeDee Lamb kind of actually play again without being triple covered on every play. That would be really cool. And obviously you have an upgrade in Dak over most of what you were getting last year in terms of quarterback play. And so I could really see, that's what I want to see, is I want to see the Cowboys passing attack kind of return to form. I think it's going to, but I'd like to go ahead and see it week 1. Let's get that rolling. Like I said, I don't think it'll help them win this game, but it'd be nice to see, and it would bode well for their chances in a lot of other games if they could always have a very good passing attack. And then I'm curious about the running game. So a lot of people smarter than myself know the X's O's way better. They track it all. They don't have other stuff to do during the day. That's their job. They get to go watch the tape of all these games. They're really positive and high on Clayton Adams. If you're, a little bit more of a lax NFL fan, you're following the big names and players, mostly into fantasy football or that sort of thing, you might not know who Clayton Adams is. He was the O-line coach for the Cardinals for the past few years, and the Cardinals have had a pretty creative run game over that time period. And All the reports are that he was the guy kind of presiding over that, and he's been hired as the Cowboys offensive coordinator. And so I'm kind of curious to see, with a little bit of a different O-line and a little bit more health along the O-line, hopefully, along with the Clayton Adams addition, can the running game kind of get back on track, despite, yes, I know, your top running backs being Jaden Blue and the guy out of North Carolina who's with Denver. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name. But if you could kind of get on track despite those kind of mediocre running backs, it's Javonte Williams. That's what it is. Sorry, if you can kind of get on track, with at least creating open holes so that they can get those yards before contact, Jaden Blue and Javonte Williams, if they can get those, good run and all that. I mean, you could start looking at this Cowboys offense as one of the best in the league easily if that and the passing attack come together. And, like I said, I don't know that it matters too much for the prospects long term of the Cowboys' success this season, right? Because you've got so many issues on the defensive side of the football, but that's the type of team that gets really scary, just like the Bengals, offense. And, I've been very down on the Bengals, right? But I think it's because we've seen it very specifically. Maybe the Cowboys have a little bit more of a formula that can work on that defensive end. We'll just have to see. Yeah, the offensive juggernaut would be a good place to start. And especially solidifying and showing what you can do with the young O-line kind of opens up, in my mind, it makes it more clear where are the Cowboys going from now on, right, with a good young O-line and CeeDee Lamb, compared to if you still don't know exactly what the O-line can do for you and all you really have, like, solidified young piece-wise is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he's a great piece to have, but if that's all you have, it makes some of the question marks that come up and how the Cowboys are going to move forward much trickier, right? So moving on. I'm probably spending a little bit too much time there. That was a good 10 minutes on just the Eagles-Cowboys, which is by far not the interesting game of the week. Not the most interesting game of the week, but we'll see here. Let's start Chiefs-Chargers. Sorry about that. So they're going down to Brazil. It's an international game. The NFL did this last year too. A lot of fans get upset about the international games because of what it does team strain-wise on the schedules. The Chiefs have had a lot of those weird schedules the past few years. They've had to deal with that. But I think it's kind of cool. I think it works out pretty well. It's nice that they put it on a Friday. You get a little bit more time to get back. The travel's not so much of an impact on the next week, right? So anyways, Chiefs-Chargers. They're going to play. I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm going Chiefs. I think it's pretty hard to pick against the Chiefs, and when they're going up against an AFC West opponent, I think, what is it, in the Mahomes era, they've only lost to each of those other teams, the AFC West, 3 times, and a couple of those are just Week 18 sits. But anyways, the Chargers are a pretty good team. They made the playoffs last year, so I'm not saying this is going to be any sort of pushover. The Chiefs are only -1. Let's see here. They're only -170 on the money line. So Vegas believes there's a legitimate shot here for the Chargers to win. I could see it. It's possible. The problem is I think the Chiefs have a couple fairly critical points where they can attack the Chargers and really get after them on both sides of the ball, and that's why I kind of think it's fairly unlikely that the Chargers are going to be able to pull out a win here. I think without any stars in the secondary besides so you have Derwin James, right? But Derwin James and Khalil Mack are both getting up there in age, and then you just don't really have high-level playmakers out of them, although we could see a jump out of Deion Henley on the Chargers side. I want to give them that. But I don't really think the Chargers have the juice to take it after the Chiefs. I think Mahomes and company will get things done where they need to on that side of the ball. Missing Rashee Rice sucks, but they were without him most of last year, and they beat the Chargers twice anyways. Chargers were particularly susceptible to deep balls. I'll hit on that point a little bit later last year. I think there's potential. There's serious potential for the Chiefs to take advantage of an offense there, and then I just don't know that. I think the Chargers defense, or the Chargers offense, is exactly what the Chiefs defense is built to really take advantage of, and it's I mean, it's a scheme where Ladd McConkey is your only really truly proven pass catcher, in my opinion, in terms of what you're going to get out of him. And you don't really have a great O-line. And so, I think Chris Jones is going to get to go matchup hunting against a fairly poor interior. I think Karlaftis against Trey Pipkins is that's not where you really want to be, and I understand the Chargers didn't intend for it to come out that way, but nonetheless, that's what's happening with Alt moving over to the left side. Pipkins on right tackle. I think that's a bad matchup. Karlaftis against Pipkins is not great for the Chargers, and so when I look at this, I think the pass rush is going to be successful, and then McConkey being your only proven receiver really plays into the Chiefs' hands of, I'm assuming with the new look for the Chiefs outside cornerbacks, they can now move McDuffie around wherever he wants to go. And now you can put him on McConkey. And all due respect to McConkey, very good wide receiver. I loved him coming out of Georgia. McDuffie's better. And I think that'll show over the course of a game. And I think McConkey will have a really hard time creating consistent separation against McDuffie. And so I think that really kind of forces the hand on the passing attack, and then the Chiefs are one of the best tackling secondaries in the NFL. And so you want to argue that Omarion Hampton's going to have a reasonably good success rate via a good run scheme? I could believe it. Do I think he's going to have any breakaway runs or have consistent explosive runs that dictate the game on that side of the ball? No, the Chiefs don't typically let that sort of thing happen. They're very good at rushing to the ball and getting in there and making things happen. So yeah, I think Chiefs fairly handily in this one. What I want to see from the Chiefs, the left side of that O-line, Simmons and Suamatia. So Suamatia played left tackle for a few games last year, did not work out. Mahomes was not happy about that, if you remember. And so now they're moving him inside to guard. I've questioned on this podcast whether or not that's going to be a good move, whether or not that's actually going to produce average or above average guard play. I don't know. We're just going to have, we're going to have to see. I have my doubts. I think it's unlikely that he's really a big time playmaker at guard, but his run blocking has been very good in the preseason. And so maybe that helps some of that create more holes. That was never Tooney's strong suit at left guard there last year. As for Josh Simmons, I love Josh Simmons, but it's still a rookie left tackle, and Khalil Mack's probably going to be aligned over him most of the game based off the way the Chargers played last season. And so he's a big deal. And so that's what I got my eyes peeled on in this Chiefs-Chargers game. A lot of the time I'm going to be looking at that left side of the O-line, seeing how they're faring, if they can keep that pocket stable for Mahomes. If Mahomes can just sit there and deal, that's a really bad news for what I think is a not great Chargers secondary going up against the league's best quarterback. The other second thing I want to see out of the Chiefs is the deep ball back. I don't know. They always say this in training camp. They're like, we want to get back to the deep ball. We want to throw deep. We got to throw deep. We're finding shot plays to push the ball down the field. Okay, great. Show it to me in the regular season. And so, maybe they will. Like I said, the Chargers were bad against the deep ball last year. If they can, I think the Chiefs need to, if they're really being legit about wanting to use the deep ball, they need to get after the Chargers in that respect in this game. And so that's something I'm looking for. I want to see that in this game. As for the Chargers, can the wide receiver 2 please stand up? Let's see who it is. Is it going to be Keenan Allen? Is it going, Mike Williams is hurt now. Is it going to be Trey Harris? Is it going to be Quentin Johnston? Just somebody stand up and help out Ladd McConkey, please. I mean, they need, they let Josh Palmer walk. He was the number 2 last year. Show us something. I think most likely who that coaching staff wants it to be is Trey Harris. I think that fits the offense the best. You can use Harris, McConkey, and Keenan Allen all at the same time in a fairly good, fairly well-structured offense when you're in 11 personnel. And then Harris and McConkey gives you a true X wide receiver and a little bit more of a move guy in McConkey. And so I think that just fits so much better if Harris is the one to kind of break out and show what he can do. So I think that's what the Chargers coaching staff really has to hope is going to happen. I don't know. We'll see. Week 1, anything can happen. But can the wide receiver 2 please stand up for this team? Show us. And the second thing to watch for this is just the O-line. I mean, please, Chargers, if you have a hope of making the playoffs this season, this Slater thing can't wreck you. Like, the interior of the O-line was already bad last year. Even though you had great bookend tackles, the O-line let up plenty of pressure because the interior sucked. Well, now the interior is not really that different. It's just substituting Mekhi Becton in at right guard, who was good for the Eagles last year, but that's probably the easiest place to be good in the NFL. And so I have my question marks of just how good he'll be for the Chargers, who I think are coached well along the O-line, but it's not the Eagles. And so, you compare that, and then now you've got Trey Pipkins at right tackle instead of Joe Alt. I think Joe Alt replacing Rashawn Slater on the left side is pretty close. I think Alt even probably has higher potential than Slater long term in the NFL. But Slater's the experienced vet for now. And so I think probably you're fine there on the left side. You're going to get the same level of play. I really like Joe Alt. But Pipkins has proven over his NFL career that he is a decidedly below average offensive tackle. And so that's really worrying. And this is a Chiefs pass rush that isn't that great. And I understand Karlaftis, he's a quality rusher. Karlaftis is a quality rusher. But if you're like being taken advantage of by Karlaftis on that edge, your O-line's probably going to be a problem if you don't figure out some sort of personnel change at some point through the season. And we know that grabbing an offensive tackle that can start sometime during the season is not an easy task. So yeah, I've got my eyes peeled on that right tackle spot in particular, but the interior as well. Let's see if they can improve from last year. And then the last thing I mentioned with the Chargers is that they've got a lot of young pieces on the defense that weren't necessarily stars or really made you think that, or really showed you flashes or anything that made you think they were going to be superstars or anything. But maybe they can be. Maybe they can go from solid to really good, or maybe they can go from a little bit below average, but quality physical players, kind of like Cam Hart was last year, to being an above average, quality, starter on your offense or on your defense. And so, I could see that being a big deal and really turning around, kind of amping up this Chargers defense that was more structurally sound than explosively brilliant last year, right? So yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Let's move on to Dolphins Colts. So this is an interesting matchup. They both have had kind of head scratcher off seasons, right? The Colts, they've got this whole QB controversy brewing. The Dolphins kind of were sabotaged a lot last year by Tua's injuries, which kind of seem to be stacking up, seems to be a regular thing. They can't function without him on the field. And so, yeah, you've got the Tyreek Hill issues. You had the weird, kind of Jalen Ramsey trade away from Minkah Fitzpatrick, kind of completely abandoning this cornerback room so that you could add Minkah Fitzpatrick to the safety room. And so this is just really interesting. I am going to go with the Dolphins here. I think the Colts have the better roster, but I think there's a few things that lean me Dolphins. I think the Dolphins have the better star players. Okay, I'm not sold that Tyreek Hill's done yet. I think he was still really good last year. I think he was just working through injury, and Tua wasn't there, and so the offense wasn't functioning most of the season. So I think there's a serious something there to consider with Tyreek Hill still being quality, which gives them the best player by far on the field compared to the Colts. And then I think the really other interesting thing with the Dolphins is you've got all your pass rushers healthy right now, which usually is not the case. It was not the case last season. So Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, and Bradley Chubb are all healthy as of now. I don't think they will stay that way for the entirety of the season. I hope for the Dolphins' sake that they do, but history shows us that this is probably not the case. They're fairly injury-prone players. Bradley Chubb's getting up there in age. And so, while that's a question over the long-term part of the season, I think that gives them a good weapon to get after the Colts. Even though the Colts have a fairly good O-line, I think that gives them the ability to kind of get after the Colts in passing down situations. And so there's that. And then, as much as I'm not really a Tua believer, Tua is still better than Daniel Jones. So all that, I think Mike Vitano's a little bit better coach and schemer. And the Colts secondary has not exactly been super healthy. They've had some issues. They decided to get rid of Juju Brents. They're a really promising third-round rookie. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he got injured in training camp. He looked like he was going to take a role this offseason. And so, you've added Charvarius Ward, But he might need some time to kind of get things going again and get back into his old form. But we'll see. I think the change of scenery is really good for him. It was just so heartbreaking what happened to him and his family last year. I totally understand why the quality of the play on the field maybe wasn't what it had been in the past. My heart goes out to him. Hopefully he'll have a great bounce back season, but week 1, I think it's fair to question, how much of Charvarius Ward will show up, how much of an impact he will make. And so, yeah, I think the Chargers, the Dolphins passing attack has a serious chance to kind of go off against the Colts here and kind of win them the game, but I don't feel decisive about it by any means. Dolphins, what do I want to see? I want to see the O-line. Is the O-line better? They spent a lot of draft capital to go get Savane and put him in the interior, and I think that helps. I think Savane is a good player. I still have question marks to tackle. I still have a lot of issues with the overall construction of the O-line. I don't know that it can function well. So I don't know. That's what I want to see is, have they made strides? Have they improved that? Can they at least get the running game functional again with the O-line? Because that was the thing, is Mike McDaniel's always been this genius run game schemer. And then last year, the personnel was so bad that he couldn't even get them working in the run game. And so, yeah, I want to see that. Can they be better? Can they kind of play the role that the team needs them to play? And then does Tyreek Hill want to be here? So I know I spoke. I said I think Tyreek Hill's so good. I do believe that for sure. My question is, does he actually want to be there and play? There's a potential that we might see him traded sometime this season if he really doesn't want to be in Miami, and we don't really see his high quality of play until that point in the season. So that's definitely a question mark I have that I want to see answered. Does Tyreek Hill want to be here? How committed is he? Or is he running routes hard over the middle of the field and really committing himself? Is he going after contact in the way that Tyreek Hill likes to do? So what are we seeing there? And how does that hand look? Hopefully good. As for the Colts, I think the really key thing is that, can Daniel Jones effectively wield an embarrassment of passing game weapons against the Dolphins' poor secondary? Okay, I love the Colts' weapons in the passing game. I think Jonathan Taylor is an all right passing back, and it just gets better when you look at the wide receivers and tight ends. They added Tyler Warren in the offseason. I think he's a really good pass catching back, or pass catching tight end right off the bat. You have an assortment of weapons. You've got Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. You've got the field stretcher, Alec Pierce on the outside, and you've got Adonai Mitchell. And I like all 4 of those wide receivers. I think they create a really good room. So you've got a much better set of weapons, I think, than you had last year with just kind of Malik Neighbors and bums in New York. Can Daniel Jones be more effective? And that's really the question. And if he can't be against a pretty crappy Dolphins secondary, I think we can kind of go ahead and close the book on the Colts making the playoffs. We can close the book on probably Shane Steichen keeping his job and the GM keeping his job through this season. I think that's very highly likely to change if Daniel Jones can't produce well against this Dolphins secondary, just because of what that means for the rest of the season, because that Dolphins secondary is terrible. All right. That's all I really have key to look for the Colts. I guess the one other thing I'd put out there is I think they've got a lot of fun pass rushers. Can one of them step up and be dominant this year, hopefully, with a better structural defense and the advent of the new DC there coming over from Cincinnati? Can the pass rush get brewing again, hopefully? That'd be something I'd want to see. But anyways, moving on to Steelers versus Jets. Not the most exciting of matchups. The Aaron Rodgers Bowl, if you will. They've both kind of flip-flopped quarterbacks from the beginning of last season. Justin Fields now in New York. Right now I'm picking the Steelers. If the Jets defense is back with Aaron Glenn, I could flip that prediction easily. But going into week 1, based off what I saw of the Jets defense last year and the feeling in that building, and probably the fact that they're not actually thinking they can win much of anything this year, I'm going to go Steelers just because of the way Tomlin keeps guys playing, and I know that. I can expect that constant, right? When you look at one of these kind of teams that you're not really sure has their identity figured out, so on and so forth. I give Tomlin a big edge there. I think he's really good at attacking those teams, playing good, structured football against those teams, and just playing well against them. So yeah, I give him the edge there in those sorts of matchups. And so yeah, I'm picking Mike Tomlin on the Steelers, unless if I'm picking Mike Tomlin on the Steelers. But like I said, if the Jets defense really flips, I think you could put Aaron Rodgers in a little bit of hell. I don't believe in him or that scheme that much. So let's get into what I want to see from the Steelers. Well, what am I interested to see? And it's who's calling the plays? Is it Arthur Smith or Aaron Rodgers? As we've seen, outside of the 2-year stint in which he won 2 MVPs back-to-back with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, the past, 7, 6, 7, 8 years with Aaron Rodgers has been, I'm going to run things my way, and the offensive scheme can be damned. We're going to run drop back, quick game. We're going to play shotgun, and I'm going to throw one-on-one balls whenever I want to, whenever I feel I have a good matchup, especially out of the slot. He threw a ton of those balls to Devontae Adams last year, massive volume. And so if you just give me a second. What I want to see there is that's very different from the way Arthur Smith likes to play football. This is a marriage that a lot of really smart people, including myself, have questioned over the course of this offseason is, how's that going to mesh? How are Rodgers and Arthur Smith going to work together? What is that actually going to look like from a game plan perspective? And is Arthur Smith calling one thing and then Aaron Rodgers turning it around in the field? Who knows, right? And so that's what I want to see. Plain and simple. I think the Steelers defense is very set. I am interested to see what their first round defensive tackle does on that already stacked defensive line. I think that's fascinating. The only one other thing I could say I want to see, I just don't think I will see it, so I didn't really include it on my rundown, is can the Steelers defense stop being so damn static? If they can start actually starting to move around some of their coverage players and things like that, I start getting very, very optimistic for what they can do later in the season if they can actually make it into the playoffs. That actually turns the Steelers defense into sort of juggernaut that I think can actually take it to even good quarterbacks and good offensive schemes. So that's something I would want to see. I just don't think we're going to see. As for the Jets, can the defense re-engage? It's that simple. I brought it up when I was picking the game. If the defense can re-engage, I feel so much better about the Jets. I think the young player situation looks a lot better in terms of foundation going into the future. If they kind of look like they have been, it gets very much like, wow, this is a team we just got to completely just reorient everything that's going on here and figure this all out again. And then for the other thing I want to see out of the Jets is the run game. Obviously, a lot of people have theorized about this. This is a big thing with the fantasy football prediction of taking Justin Fields as kind of in superflex leagues or any league in which, you've got multiple quarterbacks or you've got a lot of rosters. People have talked about Justin Fields. He's going to run the ball a lot. That's going to be a boon for fantasy. What I want to see is, what does that run game look like? I've seen people talk about, hey, they could really kind of dig into a college sort of option offense here with this, because not only do you have Justin Fields, who's been a really good runner in the NFL, but you've got 3 different running backs especially led by Hall and Allen, that I think are quality guys who can play out of that backfield. And so you really have the potential to put multiple backs in there and really kind of have a weird option offense run out of that. And that could get really interesting. So I want to see if Aaron Glenn's going to kind of tap into some of that stuff. I wonder if that was the vision with hiring Justin Fields this offseason in the first place. So that's interesting. I'm not sure we're going to see it. I don't know that we've seen any signs that we know we're going to see it, but it would be fascinating to me. And so that would be something that would actually get me into watching that game big time, is if they started running some of that stuff. So let's look at the Panthers and the Jaguars here. Panthers Jags. I'm thinking I'm going to take the Jags here. I've been very profusive in my praise for the Jaguars this offseason. I'm a big Liam Cohen fan. I think he's going to transform that offensive scheme. I think Trevor Lawrence is finally going to be operating in in very high-quality conditions when you account for the combination of Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. as receiving weapons. And adding in Diami Brown as well. I think that's a good addition. And then I think the offensive scheme is going to be a lot better than it ever has been for him. And so I'm really fascinated to see what that looks like. If you also have listened to much of my stuff, you know I'm not really a Panthers fan. In particular, I'm not really a Bryce Young fan. I like my quarterbacks a little bit taller. I like my quarterbacks a little bit more immune to getting hit by defensive linemen. I like them being able to seek out those arm angles and things. And so, I just think the ceiling's very limited for the Panthers. I think their defense was historically bad last year, and while they made additions along the defensive line, I don't think it really stacks up, especially there's probably going to take some time for that unit to get things figured out this year would be my prediction. And so, I've seen some people calling out like Panthers as like a serious shot to take the NFC South, and yeah, that division is bad, but like we need to put our expectations back in check here. The Panthers are not that good. The Panthers, a lot of what people have been hanging their hats on is that Bryce Young looked really good in the back half last year, from a stat perspective and all that. And I think a lot of it's very misleading. I think he got away with a lot of throws, and I think the defensive performances from some of those teams that were playing against him were not very great. And so, yeah, I'm not a believer. So I'm going to pick the Jaguars in this one, although I think the Jaguars will continue to get a lot better as the season goes on. I'm not expecting them to be the dominant force that I think they might become later in the season. And there's still question marks with their defense as well. So still, I think this is probably a reasonably close game. Panthers, what are we looking to see? Did the defensive additions do anything? I already touched on this. I don't think that this is like going to really absolve them of being a fairly poor quality defense, but maybe it does. Maybe Tershawn Wharton, Derek Brown being back, all this kind of combines into a quality defense and can do some things, right? And so let's see. That's something I'm looking out for with them. If the defense can be a lot better, now we're having a different conversation with a defense that can kind of help Bryce Young not have to lay everything out there, be a little bit more of a mediocre quarterback in terms of play and production, and still have success. And so that would be kind of a godsend for their season hopes, I think, at least based on my evaluation. The other thing I want to see is pretty basic. I want to see, and they did this a little bit in the preseason. I'll say this for Bryce Young, he gives his wide receivers chances. That's one of the things he does as a quarterback. And so bringing in Tet McMillan to that offense, very good idea in my opinion. I like Tet McMillan. I think people were down on him during the offseason process, the draft process, just because he's not quite the speedy super separation receiver that we've kind of seen from a lot of the big time prospects in recent years. He's a little bit more the bigger DeAndre Hopkins type X, Mike Evans, long, true X receiver. And so, I have a few question marks. There's definitely an up in physicality. It's harder to play like that in the NFL. But this is a good Jaguars secondary to do it, to work it with. And so, I'm ready to see some back shoulder balls. That's what I want to see. I want to see them throw it up, give Tet chances, let him go win 50-50 balls that with him are probably closer to 75-25 balls. And I could see this offense making a living off that and really feeding off those, those big plays if you can kind of chunk your way down the field in games with those, especially against bad secondaries. I think that could be a path to success for the Panthers this season. As for the Jaguars, I want to see Liam Cohen bring the easy buttons to the offense. Like I've talked about, Trevor Lawrence has not had good offensive scheme and support in recent years from his coaching staff. It's been a lot better than that first season with Urban Meyer, but I don't think the structure of the offense has been very good. And so I want to see what Liam Cohen can do. I want to see them put in easy buttons, easy plays for Trevor to make, just get the ball out quick, produce yardage, and make the rest of the game easier on Trevor. Allow him to settle into a rhythm. Play the game the way your quarterback needs it to be played. And I think that could pay dividends for them. So that's what I'm looking to see. That's what Liam Cohen did in Tampa Bay for a much worse quarterback, in my opinion, in Baker Mayfield than Trevor Lawrence. And so if he can bring that to Trevor Lawrence, I think that's a big deal. The other thing I'm curious to see, this is a little bit more of a small thing, is just how do they use Travis Hunter? I want to see where they're lining him up. Is he getting a lot of the screen looks like I think he will? I think on offense, that's what we're expecting to see. And then on defense, is he a package player? Because that's kind of what's been speculated, is that he's going to play full-time offense and be a package player on defense. That's kind of what I've been hearing. Some people think, though, he's going to jump straight into a full-time role in both offense and defense, and maybe that's the case. I'm just fascinated to see what that is, and I know this is very cliche. People who are not fans of the Jags probably aren't that interested to hear this, but like as a football sicko, it's just fascinating questions. So you're going to have to keep dealing with people looking at this situation and evaluating it and talking about it, because it's fascinating to us. So, all right, let's talk Cardinals Saints. I appreciate you guys dealing with, if you're still watching this, I appreciate you dealing with the dead air of the me drinking the water from here and there, talking all the time, parches my throat, so I appreciate it. Cardinals versus Saints. This is possibly the worst matchup of the entire slate, I think. It's definitely the one I would be least excited to watch. There's just not much interesting stuff going on here, but I'm going to take a crack at it. So I think the Cardinals could be a competitive team this year. I'm not trying to slam them. This is mostly about the Saints are a pathetic organization that aren't doing anything to actually restructure the team and move forward to the future. And it's sad. But anyways, I'm picking the Cardinals. They're a much better team. They have a much better quarterback. They have better passing game weapons. I think they have a better O-line. I think they have a better running back. I'm sorry, Alvin Kamara is still better. They do not have a better running back. They have a better running game. And I think they have probably a better better defense with the additions that they've made this offseason. And so, yeah, I'm picking the Cardinals. What I want to see from them is, did the defensive additions do anything? So far, the defense has just kind of been a little bit of a frisky unit led by Budda Baker that's been interesting. But they made a lot of additions along the front. Almost all their offseason resources were allocated towards that defense. And so, yeah, I want to see what that looks like. I want to see how big of an impact that's going to make. Is Will Johnson going to shine? I think that would be really cool after his slide in the draft. So, yeah. What did the defensive additions do? I think it's pretty simple. Do they now have some impact players, some playmakers on that side of the ball outside of Budda Baker? Because that would really help kind of catapult their chances and ability to make things happen in the NFC West this season. And then is the run game still creative? I talked about with the Cowboys earlier, if you were listening then, I talked about how Clayton Adams has departed, the former O-line coach for the Cardinals. He's departed and he's headed off to Cowboys territory. Is that run game still very creative? Because I don't think the offensive line is like uber talented or anything like that, and I don't think James Conner's that great of a running back, but the run game has been very creative, and it's made things work anyways. And so, can that keep rolling without Clayton Adams there? I'm inclined to say yes. With the number of years that Clayton Adams was there, they're going to have some idea of how to keep that rolling and all that. Maybe what's just going to be lacking is new wrinkles and things won't be there, but you'll still have, kind of the setup for how they want to run things. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I think that could be a big deal for their offensive success rate over the course of this season. So, Saints. Here's the primary thing I want to see the Saints do in this game. Lose. I'm 100% serious. The Saints are terrible. They finally need to commit to scraping this thing and just obliterate it. Move on. I can't believe we're still in this place. It's been like 5 years since they should have wiped this roster, and they just keep making stupid moves. I mean, for what purpose? What purpose did we sign Justin Reed to his third contract this offseason? I like Justin Reed. He's been a really nice player. The Saints aren't going to do anything valuable with him. There's no reason to pay a guy like that that's aging out. By the time the Saints are competitive, he will be long gone. And so that's just a microcosm of the way that the Saints are treating things. And I know Saints fans are really frustrated with the team-building philosophy. It's just terrible. And I don't think the owners particularly care, to be honest. I think they're just sitting there owning the team and letting things happen as it will. And it's sad to see. It's pretty sad. That's really all I have to say about it. And so lose the game. Start playing for draft position, to be perfectly honest with you, and lose the game, and keep losing games until you have the number 1 overall pick, and hopefully there's a really good QB prospect at the end of this tunnel, and you can kind of format things and all that. On the other side of the coin, I do like there are some player things that matter here. The thing I want to watch with that is, does Banks make things fall into place with the fairly young O-line, right? Kelvin Banks Jr. was their first-round pick this year. I like him. He's an offensive tackle out of Texas. Only question is a little bit of short arms. Should he have been a guard, so on and so forth. But he's a really solid player. And so does him slotting into left tackle kind of let things structure out in a spot where all 5 offensive linemen are now a lot better. And that's what I think. If you could get to a place by the end of the season that you're happy with a young offensive line, now the quarterback slot is less of like, oh, we just need to take a quarterback, and it's like, oh wait, we're kind of actually set up to like take a quarterback in this draft, put him behind a good offensive line. Maybe we can go like figure out one other move in the draft or something else to just make sure we get him some sort of weapon, because I'm not sold on Olave, but I like Shaheed. He's a nice piece, right? Who can hopefully work with the next quarterback. Maybe you can kind of work that all out and kind of just create a good situation for your quarterback as you continue to kind of wipe this roster clean. It's a massive uphill battle. I could definitely see the case if you just want to say, hey, I don't care if the Saints get the number 1 pick. I don't care if there's a messiah at quarterback at 1. You still got to you still got to trade back and continue wiping the roster before you could put a quarterback in this situation. I could get that. But I think maybe if the offensive line kind of comes into play in the way that Kelvin Banks could help it to, you could start to get on board with like, hey, this is not a terrible landing spot for a number 1 overall pick quarterback, So that's what I'd be looking at. Moving on, not sure how I spent that much time on the Cardinals versus the Saints, but we're going to move on to Giants-Commanders here. All right. Giants versus Commanders. Somehow the Giants coaching staff and front office is still in place. And I don't say that because I dislike them. I like them. It's just that usually by now, after these sorts of seasons, you're gone. Maybe the owners feel bad for forcing them to pay Daniel Jones because that sucked. Anyways, moving on. I'm picking the Commanders, obviously. Great team last year. I think they're going to be better this year. The only thing you can quibble about this offseason, I don't really think they did anything to improve their ceiling when they're kind of in an active Super Bowl chase. But what they did was they secured their floor. And so I think that makes them way better. Like the odds of them beating teams like the Giants now are way better, right? Several offensive line additions that I think make them a lot better. Brandon Coleman was a reasonably good left tackle for them last year. He was a 3rd-round pick. There are limitations to guys like that, but he was a reasonably good left tackle this year. Now he's playing left guard instead. So you don't have him playing left tackle. You have Laramie Tunsil playing left tackle now. That's an upgrade. Brandon Coleman at left guard's an upgrade. And then it looks like Josh Connerly's set to start at right tackle. And so this looks like it could be a pretty damn good offensive line, especially in terms of pass protection. And so when I look at this, I don't see any reason why the Commanders, which the only argument for them winning games this year, the only real argument, unless if Malik Neighbors is going to come some sort of like black hole, beat everyone sort of like target, like if he's going to be an offense onto himself, maybe you can make the argument that offense is going to be good enough. But outside of that, very unlikely scenario happening, it's the Giants' defensive line, right? They've kind of built a juggernaut there. And so the Commanders securing their O-line comes at a pretty good time for this first week 1 matchup. And so, yeah, I fully expect the Commanders to win handily. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I would bet a lot of money on that. Giants, what do I want to see out of them? I want to see that dominant defensive line. I want to see that actually come to fruition because so far it's just been theorized, right? We haven't seen a real game with it. But Abdul Carter's looked really good in training camp, in joint practices, in preseason games. He's looked fantastic. I'm predicting him to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I fully expect that to come to fruition. And so, yeah, is this defensive line dominant? So you've got Dexter Lawrence on the interior, and then Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau on the interior. On the outside, playing the edge. If that can all work together, you could actually have a unit that's like really dictating games, and that could give you the potential to create some wins this season. I don't know if it's enough wins to keep Dable and company in their jobs, but yeah, and it'd at least be a really good signal moving forward for whoever inherits that team. So the other question I have with the Giants, is Russ better than Jones and company? Yeah, so Daniel Jones and the rest of the quarterbacks that played last year for the New York Giants. If he's enough better, which I think is perfectly possible, if he's enough better, this offense could be significantly better. Main thing I care about, though, is I own Malik Neighbors in both my dynasty leagues, and so I'm very, very happy to see him go out there and dominate, hopefully even better than last season. So frankly, that's what I'm watching for, because I don't think there's a lot else to really care about with the Giants. But no, in all seriousness, if they could reach some sort of late career renaissance with Russ and utilize that connection with the Neighbors, paired with the offensive line playing a little bit better, and the defensive line being dominant, and the secondary kind of having gotten pieced together. I know that's a lot of ifs, but maybe, just maybe, Dable and company could save their jobs. So that would be the case to be there, but you need Russ to play like significantly better than Daniel Jones and his fellow quarterbacks did last year in order for that to come to pass. So that's a absolute requirement. So that's something I'm going to keep my eye on. As for the Commanders, I want to know just how good is the O-line? How good does that pass protection look? I think they've got a good test coming week 1. So I think it'll be a good way to get an idea of how good is this offensive line going to be when they get into January and they're playing against the hardcore teams. They are like the Eagles and the Lions in those postseason matchups. What does that look like? So I think that's something I want to know. And then lastly is Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt. Is that burst legit? The run game last year, it was all right. It lacked burst completely. Eckler's old, Brian Robinson Jr., that's just not really his game. So can Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt? I'm not really focused on him being like some great fantasy back or anything like that, like a lot of people are and all that. That's where most of the news and stuff has been fixated on that he's earned the role. What I'm interested in is, can he actually bring enough burst that it alters kind of the explosive nature of that run game, and it gives the Commanders another barb to really get after people with on offense, and kind of force them to choose and pick their poisons, right? Typically in the modern NFL, if your run game has zero explosivity to it, there's no real care from defensive coordinators to be like, hey, we're going to actively like go out of our way to stop the run game. Like, all defensive coordinators talk about earning the right to rush the passer via stopping the run game, but like in reality, most of the focus is still focused on the passing game and making sure that, you're playing. There's a lot of too high coverage shells played and all that, just making sure that you're not allowing explosive plays that way. If you're going to start threatening them with the run game and start ripping off 10+ yard gains consistently via light boxes, now we're cooking. Now we're talking about something that really worries defensive coordinators and forces them to choose. So that's what I want to see there out of that Commanders team. So moving on to Buccaneers and Falcons. All right. If you watched our season preview show, you'll know that I picked the Falcons to win the NFC South, and I picked the Buccaneers to not even make the playoffs. And my pick on this game will reflect that. I'm going to pick the Falcons to win. They both got offensive tackles out for this game, so I think that's a very interesting component to this. But I just think the Falcons are going to have a better year this year. I'm very worried about the departure of Liam Cohen and what that's going to do to the Buccaneers offense. I'm not really a Baker Mayfield fan, and I know it's fair to clap back at me and say, hey, Michael Penix started 3 games last year, dude. What are you talking about? Baker's better than that at least. And my kickback to that is like, I'm not sure. Penix made a lot of good plays last year. I'm not sure if all of them were intentional or not. But there's something to him. There's some friskiness to him. He can really push the ball. And, I think he's a very pro-ready sort of quarterback in terms of all the experience and all that he's had. And so, I think the Falcons are just going to have a better year. What I'm looking for in this game is now that Cohen's gone, I already touched on this, but now what? What does the offensive look like? Are you maintaining these easy buttons? Is the screen game still good? Are you utilizing the mobility of these offensive linemen? I understand Tristan Wirfs won't be there, but the rest of them are, and so I think I think there's going to be enough to see in that respect, what's going on there. I want to see it. And then Hassan Reddick, has he got anything left on that defensive side of the ball? I think they could really, really use another pass rusher. And kind of bolster that front seven, especially on passing downs, help out what I think is not a fantastic secondary. And so, does Hassan Reddick have anything left? For the Falcons, I think they're the far more interesting team. Obviously, I want to see just how good is Penix? This is like his fourth start. Let's see how he's operating. Let's see if he's cleaned up some of those mechanics over the offseason. Maybe hopefully a little bit less prone to spraying balls would be nice. And then can you please get to the quarterback on defense? So they drafted Jalen Walker and James Pierce in the first round. They traded their first round pick this year to get back into the first round and draft James Pierce. In addition to having already drafted Jalen Walker. They both play off the edge. That's what I want to see. Can they play really good pass rushing football when they get the opportunity? I don't know yet. We're going to have to see. Historically, their pass rush, especially off the edge, has been terrible. And so if they can actually get something out of those guys, if they can get to the quarterback well, I think it could really, really kind of give us a good idea of just how far they could go in February or January, not February probably, but in January when playoffs roll around, how much they could potentially accomplish there. And then lastly, is the right tackle injury a problem? He's out for the year. This is a well-coached Bucs defense. I guarantee you they're going to try and take advantage of it. And so, how much of a problem is that injury? Can they kind of patchwork it? Is the backup going to do all right? Is the question mark there? I think the benefit there is you probably got one of the best right guards in the NFL, and he's very adaptable and can really help that right tackle play. That's what I'm going to look at though for the Falcons. So, lastly, still in the middle of the 1:00 slates. We got the Bengals versus the Browns. Wow, taking a lot of time on all these. This is gonna run long, guys. All right, got a lot of teams still to get through. Bengals and Browns. Here's what I'm looking at. The Bengals are gonna win. The Browns are right up next to the Saints in terms of being one of the worst rosters in football. Joe Flacco's not a good starting quarterback anymore. Just frankly, you're looking at a bottom, below 25 ranked quarterback. So that's a tough spot to be for the Browns. So I think Bengals pretty definitive win here. As bad as that Bengals defense is. What I want to see out of the Bengals, are there any promising changes on defense? Okay. I don't think so. I don't think they've added good players, but man, just show me something. Did somebody come along? Does Dax Hill look really good now, or something like that? If you can get a couple pops like that, now we can start actually talking about the Bengals as a legitimate shot at doing something in the playoffs. I don't even think they're going to get there, but I think it's perfectly possible if they can actually get the defense to shape up and be an average unit somehow via some miraculous transformations. Now we can talk about them actually being able to do something in the playoffs. I don't really like the departure of Lou Anarumo. I think that's a coup for the Colts getting him. I think he's a really good defensive coordinator, so I doubt they're going to be better, but we'll see. Show me something. And then is the offense ready for the season to start? This has been hammered home by a lot of people, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but very simply, the Bengals have started out slow the past few years, and it's definitely contributed to them missing the playoffs the last 2 years. And so can they just actually come out and be ready to win games right off the bat? If they can, I think that'll really help their chances of making the playoffs this year. So, all right, Raiders versus Patriots. I'm picking the Patriots here. Anybody who's listened to this podcast knows that I am big on Drake May and the Patriots. I love the Patriots this year. I think they're going to be really good. I chose them to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs, but I think relative to where they were, they're going to be really good, right? The Raiders, I think, I'm very, very worried about their secondary. I don't see how you can go up against a serious passing attack or any sort of quality quarterback and like legitimately defend people with that secondary. So I am going to have a really hard time picking them to win games this year, despite what's probably going to be a pretty interesting and dynamic offense. As for what I want to see with the Raiders, it is that interesting dynamic offense, and in particular it's the two additions to that offense this season in Gene and Geno. I want to see how they work together. Is Gene really a blue chip running back like he should be, being picked in the top 10 like that? I believe in Gene, but we need to see it for sure. We need to see him translate that tackle breaking ability to the NFL in a real regular season game. So that's going to be fun to watch. And then Geno's a massive upgrade at quarterback from what they had last year. And so that's a big deal. He's a borderline top 10 quarterback. What does that give the offense? How does that change things? So that's interesting. Last name I'll throw out there that's new is Chip Kelly. How does his scheme, he's the new offensive coordinator, how does that scheme kind of influence what they're doing? I'm assuming it's going to be a fairly big shift in play style and all that. So yeah, look for, how well the Raiders are handling those new sorts of formations and things and play style. And then offensive personnel is kind of something I'm curious to see with that as well. Are they going to play lots of 12 personnel with Michael Mayer on the field? And then, because Brock Bowers is basically a big power slot. So even if you're in 12 personnel, you're still kind of playing 11 personnel with Bowers playing the big power slot. And so it's kind of a little bit of a in-betweener cheat code sort of formation there. And I could see Chip Kelly wanting to utilize that a lot. So that's something interesting to look out for. As for the Patriots, Drake May, that's what I want to see. Drake May. How does he look? Can we eliminate some of those poor decisions? That was really like my only gripe with him as a quarterback last year, besides basic rookie things. And then the other thing I want to see personnel-wise with the Patriots is how does that cornerback duo look with Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, which I think has the ability to specifically limit what the Raiders want to do in their passing attack. And so, yeah, how does that cornerback duo operate if they're true, these are both A-level corners this year, which I think I think Christian Gonzalez is really good, and Carlton Davis was fantastic with the Lions last year. If they can be those sorts of true, high-level corners, both on the same team, you get a really nice ability to defensively scheme against offenses, and it's something that a lot of offenses are going to have a really hard time dealing with and figuring out. So that's fascinating to me. Lastly, with the Patriots, I want to see the passing game fully online against a poor Raiders secondary, right? Kind of a bad Raiders secondary, like I said. The passing game should go to work, even if they're going to have some starts and stops, and there's going to be some question marks with the pass protection still, and there's going to be some question marks with the wide receivers and the passing game weapons. Even if that's going to exist, you should still start off week one good against this bad of a Raiders secondary. Let's see that. And the last little shout out I'll give to the Patriots is Travion Henderson looks really, really cool. Let's see how that looks. I'm excited to see that. All right, into the 4:00 game windows. We don't have too many more to go now, I guess, now that I've gotten into that. We have the 49ers versus the Seahawks. Once again, if you listen to the season preview episode here on Save the Franchise, you'll know that I'm pretty big on the 49ers this year in terms of I think they're going to win the division. And so I think they're going to beat the Seahawks in this game. I think you've still got so much talent on that roster. You've got 6 all-pro players. They're just too good to fail. And I think they've kind of shored up a lot of the weak points. The right side of the offensive line still kind of sucks, but it is what it is. They've gotten by with that before. They've been a high-level elite offense with that before. So I can definitely see them overcoming that. I think that's something that they can deal with. I'm taking the 49ers over the Seahawks. I'm not really a Sam Darnold believer. I think Clint Kubiak's a good offensive coordinator, and that will help Sam Darnold, but I just don't see that offense being good enough. That interior of the offensive line is terrible, and I will cede the idea that the Seahawks can be a very elite, high-level defense, but I don't think they're gonna be we're gonna put teams in hell all by ourselves sort of defense this year. And so, yeah, when I look at that, I just don't really think they have a serious shot to beat the 49ers. What I want to see out of this game for the 49ers, does Christian McCaffrey have a full workload? Are they utilizing him that much, or is there some sort of residual snap count sort of issue where they're not actually getting full Christian McCaffrey? Because that could seriously impact both the passing game and the running game. As for the secondary and the O-line, did we find any surprises? Because I'm pretty sure that these poor units will continue to be bad units heading into this year due to the fact that there were not significant additions to them. However, maybe, just like happens every year, they found a surprise. If they did, that could totally transform what one of those sides of the balls looks like, and it could really change the outlook of this 49ers team. So I'm going to keep my eye peeled for if there's any surprises there in terms of quality play out of any of those players. And then lastly, the defensive front, we got to keep our eye on. It was terrible last year. Fred Warner was injured for a lot of it. Nick Bosa was kind of the lone soldier, really making plays at the same level as he used to be. The rest of the defensive line wasn't very good. You've got Saleh back in the building now. He loves to rely on his four-man pass rush, and they invested heavily in that four-man pass rush during the offseason. In particular, I want to see Michael Williams. I'm a big Michael Williams fan. I just want to see how that goes. Hopefully, they're much better in run defense this season. As for the Seahawks, I want to know who's playing big nickel most of the time. So that's kind of been Witherspoon's role in this defense. It's been really, really good. It means that even when they're playing nickel, they're playing kind of because Witherspoon's so big and such a sure-handed tackler. It's kind of meant that Witherspoon is playing kind of playing like your third linebacker almost in base defense, and so it lets you kind of bridge that gap and play the way you want to play, and be more dynamic on defense. And so, but they brought in Emmanuel this year, Nick Emmanuel, the safety in the draft, and that's kind of the role that I think he's slated to play too in this defense. And so I'm curious, are they trying to send Witherspoon, despite him being so good at that big nickel role, are they sending Nick Emmanuel down there and they're going to send Witherspoon out to the outside? I'm not against that, but it seems like an unnecessary move when Witherspoon's been so good in the big nickel. Just such a big difference maker. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. And then on offense, is Clint Kubiak really going to bring, is this just going to be heavy run game from the get-go? Is it going to be hell or high water? We are going to run the ball, and we are going to use heavy play action to create our passing game. Is it really going to be that dramatic? Is Kubiak going to transform the system that much? If so, a little bit of fantasy advice, Kenneth Walker's going to be good the whole season. Yeah. All right, moving on. Titans, Broncos. I'm not sure how this ended up in the 4 p.m. slot. Yes, Broncos, I'm hating on you. You're not that exciting to watch yet, and this is a Titans team that could be in contention for the number 1 overall pick again. Feel free to tell me why I'm wrong in the comments and come hate on me, but that's how I feel about this. I'm picking the Broncos to win, obviously. Much better team. They made the playoffs last year. The Titans just really aren't there yet, especially on defense. Only one serious passing weapon, which I think really, really hurts you. Surtain should follow Ridley all over the field and limit that as much as possible. Not a great first matchup. The schedule makers were not helping the Titans at all with this first matchup for Cam Ward. What do I want to see out of this game? Cam Ward, obviously for the Titans. Let's just see how he looks in a real game. Get the action going. I think he's looked pretty good in the preseason. All the reports about the work ethic translating and all that seems really good. It's very positive, but when the lights turn on, when it's actual NFL football, that's when things matter, right? So let's see how that goes, how that looks. And then the other thing I want to see is that does that kind of reshuffled offensive line work? Is it going to be better than last year? It wasn't very good. Then it wasn't helped out by Will Levis being kind of a terrible quarterback in terms of pocket awareness. I think he made them look worse than they were. But Latham's moving back over to the right side. You're bringing in the Steelers left tackle in free agency who's played solid. And so, yeah, I think you could make the argument that they're going to be a lot better. And that could kind of really help Cam Ward have a stable, good learning environment his rookie season, which is really what this season is going to be all about for the Titans. So, that's what I'm looking at there for the Titans. For the Broncos, my first point is just don't just win. Dominate. If the Broncos are what the media seems to think they are now, and to be clear, I picked the Broncos to make the playoffs again. I think they're going to be a quality team. But people are talking about the Broncos like they could make noise in the playoffs, like they could be a legitimate team. All right, we need to like see them really take it to teams and play like it then. I mean, they didn't really beat really good teams last year, and I understand they don't have an opportunity to do that in week 1. So the best thing they can show me there in terms of being a contender is, can you treat the Titans like a contender would and just slap them out of the way? Lastly, I'm curious, are we going to see more traditional drop back game out of Bo Nix and that passing game this year? They used a lot of quick game, a lot of getting him out of the pocket and moving. They did just a lot of things to make the picture very clear for him and simplify things for Bo Nix last year, which is totally understandable. I'm not saying that was the wrong way to handle the quarterback situation, but at certain points against good defenses, you can't use those smoke screens as much, when you play against the good defenses in the playoffs. And so I want to see, can they integrate a little bit more traditional drop back passing game, and can Bo Nix carry that load? So that's what I want to see there. Moving on to Lions-Packers. Big marquee game in this 4 o'clock window. This is a big game even before Micah Parsons showed up on the Packers' doorstep. This was going to be a big game, but now it's an even bigger one. So I'm picking the Lions to win. The Lions are actually not favored in this game, according to Vegas, which I think is wild. I understand the coordinators left, but I think the Lions have been getting treated in a very poor way this offseason, and I'm not picking them to win the Super Bowl, but I think they'll be really, really good still this year. And I think they're going to beat the Packers in this game. I just think that what they have on offense is very difficult to deal with and game plan against tonight. Jeff Hafley, very smart defensive coordinator. There's just not a lot of solutions for an offense like the Lions. Dan Campbell has had these new coordinators tapped to take over for quite a while now. I think they were ready for this, and I think at least this first iteration of the Lions brain drain is going to go well, even if some of the next ones might not. What I want to see out of the Lions is I want to see them remind the NFL media that they're a top-flight contender. I cannot believe how many people I've seen not just picking the Lions to not win the division. I've seen people picking the Lions to not make the playoffs. I've seen people picking the Lions to go ahead and just lose right away in the wild card. I'm kind of shocked at what I'm seeing. And I don't think they're going to win the 1 seed. I think that's going to be the Eagles this year. But, geez, I mean, the Lions should still be easily the favorite to win this division, in my opinion, and I think they should be considered a very likely team to go ways in the playoffs. So I want to see them remind NFL media of that. I want to see what the scheme looks like on both sides of the ball. This is basic. I know, like I said, I don't think the coordinators leaving is I think they're going to be able to handle that, but I do want to see what it looks like. Are they kind of just trying to run things the way they were running things before with Glenn and Johnson, or are they kind of going to add some of their own spices to it, mixed up a little bit, just some wrinkles, things like that? I just want to see it. I want to know what it's going to look like. I'm fascinated. So that's that. And then anyone who's listened recently to the podcast, I'm a big fan of Isaac Tesla. I think him slotting in as their third wide receiver is going to be a big deal, and he's really good. I think he's really good. And that's going to be fascinating to watch with a team that already has tons of offensive weapons. All right. As for the Packers, is Matthew Golden the wide receiver 1 already? This is a big deal. I mean, this is I'm really interested to see what that looks like, and where the target share is going. They've been very split in the past, and no one wide receiver has kind of really reached out to kind of take a hold of that role, and so I want to see what that's going to look like. As for the defense, what I want to see there is, and this might be a little bit more of the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, because Parsons joined them so late here before the start of the season. But I want to see, how do Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness profit from Parsons kind of occupying the attention of a lot of the offensive linemen on opposing teams, right? How does Parsons sort of influence and scare factor open things up for the rest of the pass rushers on the Green Bay Packers. I think that's interesting. And I think we'll get a glimpse of a little bit of what that might do in this Lions game. So that's something I'm excited to see. Texans and Rams, last game of the 4:00 window on Sunday. So I think Texans are going to win this one. I'm very, very concerned with the Stafford back injury. I don't think the O-line for the Rams is that great. And I think the Texans have a really, really good pass rush. So if Matt Stafford's out there, obviously if he's not out there, I'm definitely picking the Texans to win. If he is out there, which I think he will be, to be clear, I think he's going to get hit a lot. He couldn't move very well at the end of last year, and the back was affecting him. And I think getting hit a lot in this game, like he will, with a really good pass rush across from him, is not going to help with that. And so I think you could see a lot of sacks out of his inability to move. I think you could see his ability to play and process degrade throughout the course of the game. And yeah, I want to see what that looks like. I think it could be fairly frightening to the Rams' prospects how Week 1 looks there. So yeah, I'm picking the Texans to win. As for what I want to see out of the Texans, O-line. I think the O-line is going to be terrible. I think they're probably going to get taken apart pretty good by the Rams pass rush. So I could hear the argument if you said you wanted the Rams to win. I just think that the Texans have the secondary to back it up to make it a really terrible situation for the Rams to deal with on offense. And so, yeah, out of the Texans, though, specifically, like O-line. Can you just, like, have reasonable pass protection rules? Can you pick up stunts in games well? Can we, like, play competently and together? I don't know that I have a lot of hope for that. I think the talent is a lot worse along the offensive line, but if they could just at least have the right structure, it will probably be a lot better than it was last year. As for the wide receiver pecking order, that's what the other thing I'm kind of curious about with the Texans is, like, how does that look? So you've obviously got top dog Nico Collins. He's the wide receiver 1, but, like, who's the wide receiver 2? Who's the wide receiver 3 between Kirk, Higgins, Noel, and Watson? How does that shape up? That's what I'm interested to see. Kind of just, I think that's going to be informative as to just how capable the Texans will be of, especially quick game, because I don't think that's Nico Collins' strength. And I think if you could get some of these wide receivers operating in the quick game very well, that could really aid the ability to deal with defensive pass rush. Kind of screen game, some things like that would help as well. So, yeah. As for the Rams, it's simply, can Stafford move? Does he look better? I don't think like I said, I think all the reports out of camp say that he's going to look like he did at the end of last season. It's going to be worrying, but I want to know. Like, let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the reports are wrong. And Stafford can move well, and he looks good, ready to go, and the back thing's not going to be a big deal. But I want to know. Let's see it. And then I want to see Davante Adams' alignments and routes. So where is he lining up most of the time? Is he getting moved around a lot? Because they move Puka around a lot as well, so that's kind of interesting. Or is he more playing X most of the time? And then, what sorts of routes are they using him on? How do they really want to use him to leverage the defense? I think a lot of people have assumed that Davante Adams will just, like, replace Cooper Kupp, but they're very different wide receivers. I think they're going to be used very differently. And so I think that's a really good question as to, just how does that shake out? Yep. All right, let's move on to the Sunday night football game. The NFL cooked with this one. They're giving us Bills-Ravens Week 1. This is going to be a close game. This is going to be a good game. Very talented rosters. These are 2 out of the big 3 in the AFC. I mean, yeah. I will be sitting down and watching this game, and I will have a big, stupid grin on my face the entire time. I'm picking the Ravens to win this one. Anybody who watched our season preview show will know that I picked the Ravens to be the 3rd seed in the AFC, and I picked the Bills to be the 1st seed. But the Bills have a much easier schedule over the course of the season. That was largely what that was predicated on. And I don't know. I just think I think the Bills are going to be more of a team that gets stronger and stronger over the course of the season. I think they've got some things to figure out. I think getting more experience to some of the young players on the defense is going to be really, really helpful to the Bills. And so I think they're going to improve a lot as the season goes. Whereas I think the Ravens just kind of are what they are. And I'm not saying there aren't players that can develop there and all that. There's interesting pieces for sure, but I just think they're much more set as a team. And so I think week 1, they're going to be ready to go out there and beat the Bills. Although, like I said, I think it'll be very close. With the Ravens, what I'm excited to see, what I'm interested in seeing, is Jair Alexander. Like, Jair Alexander's on this team. Like, from a name perspective, this cornerback room's really good. In a reality perspective, they get hurt a lot. They've had up and down play a lot. So what does Jair Alexander look like? I think that's fascinating. I think it could be a really, really good secondary. I think it could be a really bad secondary, or it could be anything in between. I think everything's on the table for this Ravens team, and so I'm curious what that looks like. I don't love the depth behind him, so I think that's worth asking. I think like him playing good's kind of something not that the Ravens need, but would be very, very helpful to the Ravens this year. So, and then I want to know what the pass rush looks like outside of Madubuike. Kyle Van Noy had 12.5 sacks last year. Kind of insane. He's 34 now. The fall off could come at any moment. Like, he could be done soon for sure. And you've got Odafe Owe, and you've got Mike Green, the rookie. And I've seen things from them, but none of these guys is like really another great pass rusher next to Madubuike. And Madubuike is not necessarily like a true top end pass rushing ace. He's a very good player, very much worthy of that contract that they gave him. I think that was a really good contract for them, but he's not an elite pass rusher by any means, and so I think they really need a number 2 to kind of step up and really be the guy. And so I'm just I'm curious what that pass rush looks like. I've heard good things about Mike Green. I think there's potential there. I think he's 3rd in Defensive Rookie of the Year odds. So there's something there. I'm curious to see what that looks like. With the Bills, it's a couple of secondary players kind of that I'm looking for. So it's the second outside corner slot which looks like it's going to be occupied by Tre'Davious White, okay, who was a good player for a while. And now he's kind of old, not really the same guy he used to be. He knows the scheme, but the movement's not really there. Plenty of injuries have inhibited him. And, I don't think that's a great place to be with your third corner spot. Teron Johnson's playing the nickel. Christian Benford's playing the other outside corner slot, so I think those are good. But I just don't really see a good guy to fill that third corner role. And so that's a big question mark for me. And I want to see who's playing it, how well are they playing it, what does that look like? And then the other thing I want to see with the Bills is who's the second wide receiver. Can Keon Coleman take a step? Can the addition of Josh Palmer kind of provide another reliable weapon outside of Khalil Shakir? Or even, maybe not just the second wide receiver, but the second pass-catching option. Can Dalton Kincaid or the other tight end, Dalton Schultz, not Schultz. He plays for the Texans. Can they kind of step up and make a difference there for that team? Just another reliable pass-catching weapon. I think that could really help them in high-leverage moments. It's Dawson Knox. I knew it started with a D. Dawson Knox is that other tight end. What does that look like? How could that help them? And kind of bring it more efficiency to the offense is something I'm looking out for. As for the Vikings-Bears Monday Night Football, so this is the last game of this week. Finally got through them all. If you stuck through it with this the whole time, I really appreciate it. I've kind of been grinding this whole hour talking nonstop. So Vikings-Bears Monday Night Football. I'm picking the Vikings to win. Playoff team last year. I think the Bears are going to be good this year. I think this is week 1 too, though. They're learning a new scheme. It sounds like the transition to Ben Johnson's philosophy and playing style has been a little bit bumpy throughout camp in terms of I think they're getting there, but I think there's been some contention, some issues along the way. It hasn't all been a red rosy path, and so that's something I'm questioning. I'm curious about. So I don't know about it yet, right? And so when I look at it, I'm thinking Vikings in this game. The defense is really good. I think that's going to provide some stability for the Vikings. The offensive line is better than the Bears. I think the defensive line is better than the Bears' defensive line. So when you got that sort of trench play, week one, Kevin O'Connell's more entrenched, more used to being a head coach. I think there's just a lot more stability there on the Vikings side of the ball. So I'm gonna on the Vikings sideline. So I think I'm gonna pick them to win this game. What I'm looking for the Vikings, it's JJ McCarthy's first start. Let's see how it works. Obviously, big thing to look at there. And then does the O-line look good? Darrisaw's coming back from injury. He looks like he's cleared, ready to go. Hopefully that looks good. And you can get all pro play out of the left tackle spot again. And then they've got 2 new interior pieces that they acquired this offseason, or 3. Actually, I think they swapped out all 3, got 2 in free agency, and then got the 3rd one in the draft. All guys seem to be reasonably high floor prospects, and so this offensive line's kind of remade really solid. And then Brian O'Neill's kind of keeping that right tackle spot as ever. And so is this O-line going to come together and be the really quality unit that I and the rest of the and the NFL media kind of thinks it's going to look like? If it's not, I think that puts a serious dent in the Vikings' ability to kind of nurture McCarthy along and make the game easier on him, and it could have very big impact on their season. So, as for the secondary, this is kind of the concern point on the Vikings. I think if you're going to pick one out besides J.J. McCarthy, there's some old guys. So Harrison Smith's very old at this point. Can he keep it rolling? And then Isaiah Rodgers from the Eagles, new starting cornerback on the outside. How can he play? I like him, but I think there's a lot of potential variance there. Like how good can he play? The Bears have plenty of weapons to kind of test these guys out with. So I think it'll be a good look week one to kind of see how that secondary is operating and in coverage and all that. So yep. As for the Bears, Ben Johnson brings what exactly? What does it look like schematically? What are the differences? I'm sure it will be a lot better than what the Bears had last year, but I want to see it. What specifically does he see the vision for Caleb Williams and these offensive pieces as? Like, how does he want to use them? So very basic thing I want to see there, but it's true. That's when you've got a big deal like that, it's something you want to see happen. And so then the other thing I want to see is this is a little bit more specific thing. Can Caleb Williams be on time without being in a hurry? So this was a big thing last offseason. When you went and looked and broke down the film, Caleb was often very hurried up, or he was operating too slowly on a lot of plays. And he really struggled to find that middle ground of like, I'm getting through my reads and I'm going from point to point to point, and I'm going through the play and figuring out what's going on with I'm operating fast enough and getting the ball out quick enough that like I'm not getting killed in the pocket. And so that's going to be a big question for me, is like, can Ben Johnson kind of make things align in Caleb's brain in such a way that Caleb can get through those mental progressions at a fast enough rate, while still doing a quality job of them, that he can, that we can actually, see quality quarterback play out of that spot, let Caleb really start to shine there. And then lastly, is the interior of the offensive line as advertised? They went out and they really worked on that interior this offseason. In particular, that trade for Joe Thuney was a big one. They paid a lot of money for the center. Did it work out? Was it a worthwhile investment? They've really worked hard to put a quality offensive line both for the run game and for the pass protection scheme in front of Caleb Williams. And so, I want to see what that looks like, what sort of impact that has. Can they just kind of create a nice, comfortable pocket for Caleb to operate in? And I think that could also help with the timing of his passing game. So, yeah. All right, so that's it for the games. I am going to go through bets of the week real quick here. I've got some bets of the week I want to go through. I bet a decent amount. I only bet NFL. I know the NFL really well. I don't know other sports leagues really well. I'm not going to disclose exactly at this point. I'm not going to disclose exactly how much money I'm gambling and all that. And so feel free to totally ignore my advice and I'm not telling you how to run your money or any of that, but I think I'm going to be going through these every week because I enjoy doing it, and I've been fairly successful. I was fairly successful over the course of last season, and looking to do even better this year. So First things first, so I'm going to go through 5 bets here that I kind of like. My betting philosophy, you can feel free to ignore this, not operate the way I do. I typically operate on bets with high likelihoods of succeeding, right? So Vegas is favoring this side of the bet. So you get less money out of these, but your success rate should typically be higher on these types of bets. And I prefer operating in the range. Vegas is very smart. Like, the NFL lines are done very well. It's incredibly hard to gain an edge on them. But you can do it. Like, Vegas is wrong plenty of the time, right? And so the way I like to bet, the way I see myself really generating money, the bets I see are really successful for me is when I load up a large chunk of my my balance on bets that Vegas is favoring, but I think are even more likely to occur than they do. And so my first bet of the week is Chiefs money line -170. I think the Chiefs are very secure. I don't like betting their spread. Betting their spread is terrible. Okay, I'm not advocating for that by any means. But betting the money line, where you're taking a little bit of a hit on the odds and the return on money, can be a very good way to kind of securely bet money on the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are very good at winning. They do an excellent job close in games. They run those parts of the games very well, and that really helps out that winning percentage there and turns games that a lot of teams don't normally win into wins. And so I think that breaks Vegas's math a little bit. I don't think they account for it perfectly. And so I think the Chiefs money line at -170 is really, really good value. I think getting $100 back for a $170 bet on the Chiefs is pretty good there. I'm very comfortable with that. My next bet is the Patriots money line. Like I said, I think there's a few things that just like really give the Patriots a matchup advantage against the Raiders. And I like the Patriots, so that's part of the puzzle here. But it's not just like a bet on the Patriots being good, so much as I think the setup of the Raiders is very key. Like I said, I think the cornerback duo for the Patriots just really is going to lend an ability to kind of clamp down and stop a lot of what the Raiders are going to try to do on offense and limit that success and make them really grind things out. Along with, I think Vrabel's going to have that team tackling very well. And so I don't know that GT is going to have all that much success on the ground in his week 1 debut. And so I think on that side of the ball, really profitable. And then, like I said, I don't think the Raiders secondary is good enough to really stop the Patriots from doing what they want to do, despite the Patriots passing attack not really having, we don't know what exactly that's going to look like yet. But I feel pretty comfortable with saying the Patriots have some very decisive advantages over the Raiders in this game. And so Patriots money line at -155 is a bet I'm very in on as well. My last 3 bets are actually all slanted the other way. I disagree with Vegas on the odds here, so I think they're good value plays, but they won't be grabbing large parts of my balance. The Lions money line at +124. I've already talked about how I think the Lions are going to beat the Packers. I think the Lions are just a better roster at this point. I like the stability of Jared Goff over the question mark of Jordan Love, and so yeah, I'm looking for that to pull out a win for the Lions there. And so yeah, I like Lions money line at +124 there. I think that's good money value. It's not super slanted. Vegas obviously considers this game close to a coin toss, right? But yeah, I'm taking the Lions in that and the extra money in that game. CMC 80+ rushing yards is +110. That's great value. By all appearances, CMC's fully healthy, and yeah, I'm ready to bet on that. I think that's a good play. Like I said, I would keep it low on the balance. That's not something I would dedicate a lot of my money to. However, I think it's a good value play. And something like 5-10% of your balance on that sort of a play is a good one. I think that's really good value there. CMC, really good rusher and a really good scheme there in San Fran. And so, yeah, I like that 80+ mark. And then my last one here, my last bet of the week is Malik Neighbors, 80+ receiving yards at +122. Also positive odds value there, picking Malik Neighbors. And so, yeah, that's good value, I think, as well. I think the Giants are going to get down in this game. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. When the Giants throw the ball a lot, one person gets the ball a ton. and that's Malik Neighbors. And so I think that's a good bet. He's been a really good wide receiver. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be able to translate those sorts of that sort of a target volume into receiving yards. I'm not really big on the Commanders secondary that much, to be honest. I don't think a lot of them really have the fluidity or the athleticism to keep up with Neighbors, who's just got such insane burst and a really good feel for when to break off his routes and all that. So, yep. I'm taking Malik Neighbors 80-plus receiving yards at plus 122 there. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned it. All those odds came from DraftKings, so if you're trying to tail these bets or follow them or whatever, they might be different. There might be different odds on other betting sites. Okay, I'm not gonna take the or even later on if you're doing this like a couple days after I'm recording this Wednesday night. If you're betting those later, the odds might have moved. So don't hold me to that. Anyways, if you watched this whole thing or if you just watched this betting part of it or whatever, thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening to the show. Hopefully you'll subscribe, come back for more. I'm going to try and keep this going throughout the whole NFL season. Going to have a lot of good analysis coming your way. Tyler and Austin should be here plenty of the time, breaking down games, talking about the new NFL season and everything that's going on. We're really excited for it. So, yep. Thank you for joining us.